Last year was one of the toughest years of my life. It was also the best year of my life. In April 2024, I found myself in a position to drive change. I was in the right place at the right time and resourced to recognize an opportunity at a building called 195 Pearls Hill Terrace. The building needed quality people and recurring communal activities. There was a possibility to delay redevelopment of this charming space. I happened to know a few communities who could do just that. I did all I could to convince them to move their activities to Pearls Hill. I saw it as the best possible use of space at this historic building. I was excited. I saw this as the perfect opportunity to apply the growth and learnings I had under my belt after regenerating into the latest version of myself. I was in a season of life where I had full support from family and community to charge forth with this endeavor. I had no major obligations, and I was in the intersection of connections and stories to seize the moment. It was my baton to take and run with to make things happen for myself and for communities and spaces I deeply valued. A bit about me. I am a former recluse. I know a thing or two about not hitting milestones, about feeling left behind, about loneliness and social isolation. If you asked me about the concept of community even 10 years ago, I might have pointed you to the community center, a space I had no relationship with. See, I don't even have a picture of community. I was a coach with Forest School Singapore, where we ran one of the most unstructured programs in the outdoors, rain or shine, with participants 4 to 14 years of age. Forest School was one of the few places on our little red dot where I felt true belonging and acceptance, where I could show up as I was and feel valued regardless. I was privileged to have Forest School Singapore be the first taste of what being in community felt like. I am a music student at Pearls Hill Terrace. I love going regularly to the building for lessons because it's like an oasis in the city. I was honestly devastated when I heard of the possibility the building might close. This is a picture of me the first time I played at a public recital, and I'll be sharing more about this experience later. I am a community builder at the Stranger Space by Stranger Conversations, now also located at Pearls Hill Terrace. All these form the bedrock for why in April 2024, I had a moment of, I know how to extend the runway of this building, to keep my music school where it is, and to create the next level of community space with strangers by applying what I learned at Forest School Singapore, and so I ran with it. I have 3 parts to my sharing today. I have a what, I have a how, and I have a why now. So, what happened? Let me show you. Welcome to the Stranger Space. This is a third place that is co-built by a diversity of individuals and communities. A third place is a place that is not your first or your second place. Your first place is your home, and your second place is your place of work, or for you, your school. So examples of third places might include the library, the park, a restaurant, a cafe, or a pub. Such third places may be more commercial or have restrictions on how folks may interact within the space. The Stranger Space is an ever-evolving third place, and perhaps it's a new piece of art that you see when you walk in, or a new configuration of the furniture, or a new feature like a revolving bookshelf or a mystery mailbox. It's always fresh and surprising to walk into the room, even for seasoned strangers who have a regular presence at the space. You never quite know what you're going to open the door to or who you might meet. In my life, I have felt deeply the value of having a third place. Third places have been harbors where I found respite, retreat, and rejuvenation to keep me going in my first and second places. So when the opportunity fell into my lap, I set out to build the mother of all third places, to make the whole of Singapore care about this building. This is what the Stranger Space looked like at the beginning. We started from scratch. It's a ground-up space funded by the community. We don't take any government or corporate money, and every single item or improvement to the space is contributed by a member of the community. So this is an example of the moment of serendipity from the early days of building this space, when I witnessed what the power of the Stranger Space that I had helped co-create was. There were 2 visitors to the space who decided on the day off to let me know that they were popping by, and they hit it off over a mutual, more than amateur understanding of coffee and tarot. Two topics that I couldn't really participate in, and yet I was amazed at the flow of conversation between them, and I was just like happy to be a fly on the wall on this conversation. Perhaps they felt the intentionality of the space, that we create environments that make it easy to enter a conversation with the stranger that is way beyond small talk. In the 10 months since I've been consistently going to the space and building it, I've witnessed that moments of serendipity like that actually happen quite regularly, to the point that I'm no longer amazed. My personal wish is for moments of serendipity to be so commonplace that serendipity becomes a thing of the past. So how did this third place happen? I applied what I learned at Forest School Singapore. It was the benchmark for me of what a community could and should be. A little bit about Forest School Singapore. It is an all-weather program, and a common refrain that we use to tell the children is, when you're ready. It is in doing things for themselves that the child trusts and believes in their own abilities. Forcing them to do anything outside of their readiness is, to me, counterproductive to their development, and they just learn to resist, resent, or stop trying. A more lasting growth comes when they intrinsically want to try. So whether it's a 4-year-old struggling and managing his own wet shoes all the way back to the pickup point to meet mom and dad after deciding to wade into the river with your wet shoes, or a 14-year-old who decides to just take a leap between like maybe a fallen tree to the next landing point just to see if he can make it, and lands in the mud. You can see the mud all over his back. Or as the coach who also has to go through her own struggles to understand how to hold space for the child. At Forest School, we all went through the same processes. It is a place where we even embrace struggle to a reasonable degree because we know it's necessary for growth. I was very lucky to have had 3 years to deepen my relationship with nature and rehome my sense of safety, to remember the parts of me that had gone into hiding. Forest School was the environment in which I relearned how to relate to people. At the stranger space, I was initially rather out of my element. I wasn't dealing with children in the outdoors where I could simply relate to them from my own experience of being a child. At the stranger space, I didn't have the work or life experience that people would assume I had just because of my age. I am a person who acts from instinct, sometimes without quite knowing why. So I wrote these words in the very early days of building the space. Routines are not about doing the same thing over and over every day for the rest of your life. They are about boosting energy and performance so that you can create the life that you know you are capable of. When the window of perfect conditions to build the space started closing for me, and I had more obligations, maintaining a routine became all the more important if I wanted to keep going with building the space of my dreams. A big part of the how in building the stranger space was to show up regardless of how I was feeling, whether I knew what to do or not. And let me tell you, there were lots of times when I had no idea where we would start from. Every day, it was a choice to keep trusting in the process, to trust that overwhelming feeling of I know how to bring people to the building, and to figure out pathways from there to keep them in the building, to believe in my ability to learn and bridge even between strangers and when I was very out of my comfort zone. And very often, just in simply being present, there was often a situation where a new stranger might walk in, and that moment of serendipity I talked about, they would talk about something that I was like, this thing you're saying is actually giving me so much insight to this problem that you have no idea I'm dealing with, and I would find a way to solve a problem. It's in the small nudges and small steps that we make change happen, not just in the big moves. Big change is made up of numerous small shifts, and it is in the routine of committing to show up each day that I've gotten to a sense of liberation, that I don't always have to have the answers in order to feel able to show up at the space, and that the stranger space welcomes you regardless. This is a scene from one of our role-play trainings at Forest School. There was a lot of unlearning for the adults to do at Forest School. And instead of talking about why you think that child was crying for 3 hours the whole session and just talking as adults, what we did was to really get into the movement and flow of how a child might be considered dysregulated at Forest School. So this is one of our role-play trainings where we would just act out how the child was being. And let me tell you, that is such a fast way to get to the crux of the matter. Because when you are told for 10 minutes during this role play training, please wail non-stop, you realize how much energy it takes to wail, and then you probably have deeper empathy for a child who is wailing for 3 hours, crying to go home. It really helped us get to the need for different children to be supported in different ways and to not judge or get frustrated by a child who couldn't seem to be soothed despite our best efforts. There was so much beneath the surface that one could not judge by the behavior of the child alone, but also in the coaches taking the time to understand why a child might be presenting in a certain way. So I applied what I practiced outdoors, inside a building. I would treat the strangers the way I treat children. This is not to say that I treat adults like children, but at Forest School, we treated the children as our equals. And I felt like this really helped lower the barriers to me talking to strangers because I wasn't encumbered by my own feelings of inadequacy, of not having the same work or life experiences. I would just meet the adult in the space as the human that they were presenting to me that day. So strangers could walk in and not be defined by their jobs or life stage. They could come in and I didn't care how smart or experienced or accomplished they were. And that's how I built my portion of the stranger space. I just did what worked for me previously in another community and trusted in the validity of my experience and way of doing things. Which brings me to my final point. Why am I telling you this now? I feel a need to share why I agreed to this presentation. So this is me playing at a recital organized by my music school. When I received an invitation to play, I was grappling with my own nerves until I recalled a conversation I had with a preschooler who was nervous about her end-of-year school concert. That was an aha moment for me when I realized how much it mattered to me that I could live by my own words. I realized that if I didn't say yes to the recital, it would affect my ability to be a Forest School coach. It would never matter what I encouraged a child to do if I could not embody the value myself. I would lose credibility as a coach because children can smell when you're being inauthentic. And encouraging them to do something you have never done is far harder when they know that you wouldn't do it yourself. I mentioned when I started this whole endeavor, I had the perfect window of conditions to make something happen. And it's truly because of the vision of what we want to build, a space that can hold a multitude of communities and a plurality of experiences, that people have come so quickly to make a community space like the stranger space happen together. In the lead up to this talk, there were many reasons to say no, to say I can't take on something like this is not the time, I do feel more called to be present at home than in community or to take my first public engagement on this stage. But it was also a pattern from my old life that I knew only too well. I had spent far too much time hiding that I let a lot of life pass me by. And today I stand here because I choose to be a better version of myself, the version that won't let fear and old habits take charge, the version that wants to grow however the conditions of growth. There will never be perfect times to do things. I got really lucky to have had a clear stretch for a few months last year to seize a moment to drive change. There were times in the build of the stranger space when conditions took 180-degree turns, and suddenly it would be the worst of times for me to be taking on a project. And yet there were plenty of folks from my existing communities who pitched in and we made things happen. Amazing things can happen when we move through our discomfort and expand our comfort zones. A lot of seemingly impossible things are easier when you put yourself alongside people who are aligned in spirit and motivation. People are more ready to support and understand than I ever thought they would be. As someone who used to be averse to meeting new people because I wouldn't know what to say and felt highly self-conscious, co-building the stranger space is something I never thought would happen in my lifetime. So whether it's the culture of exploration at Strangers or the space to make mistakes and struggle at Forest School, or the quest to acquire skills like music making, it comes down to one message for me, that if you never try, you'll never know. After years of feeling like I wouldn't belong anywhere, last year was the best year of my life because I made full use of all the cards I had to maximize and extend the spaces of learning that I value. There's so much to gain when you learn how to make things happen for yourself, when you take ownership of your own life, no matter the circumstances. I invite all of you to explore within your own curation of interests and discover what really matters to you and find your own stranger space. For everyone, between safety and bravery, there's a stranger space of possibilities when you try new things. I hope you meet yourself there. Thank you.